Hi, I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Hi, my name is Chrissy Clements. Everyone watches AccessTV.org.
Good morning again. This is Jonathan Small, host and producer of All About You. Today is December the 17th, 2012. I'm broadcasting live from AccessTV.org studios in downtown Hartford. And this program, again, is called All About You, which is a program designed to give the guests a chance to give their entire life story. Today I have a guest, Vice President of Communication of ESPN, Mike Soltys, and he's going to be able to give his life story. Good morning, Mike. How you doing?
Morning, Jonathan. Thank you for having me.
Okay, no problem. Could you kind of give the people out there pretty much your life, where it got started at?
I've lived in Connecticut my whole life. I grew up in stores. My father worked for the University of Connecticut in the athletic department, and I grew up there. Went to UConn, and as a senior at UConn, got an internship at ESPN, and I've been at ESPN ever since.
Okay. But as a childhood, where did your life got started? Was you interested in anything in particular growing up as a child here in Connecticut?
When I was growing up right on the University of Connecticut campus, and so had a great interest growing up in all things UConn sports. With my dad working in the athletic department, I had the opportunity to go to games of all kinds, both in stores and on the road, and really also because my dad worked servicing the media in Connecticut that were covering UConn, from a very early age got a taste of the media world and always had an interest in it.
Okay. So you really started off kind of early with the desire to get into the media industry.
Yes, it was really second nature to me at a very early age, and then had the opportunity to do some work with television that would show games at UConn. The opportunity to freelance write. I would write for the Associated Press, did a little bit for the Boston Globe and other publications, and even got the opportunity to do some radio reporting for some Connecticut radio stations about UConn football. So had a wonderful opportunity, primarily as a high school kid, to be able to do those things, which gave me a leg up and really piqued the interest of where my career ultimately took me.
Okay. Which year did you graduate from high school?
I graduated from high school in 1977 and graduated from UConn in 1981.
Okay. What was the time frame when you got started at ESPN?
In the summer of 1980, I had a chance meeting with the founder of ESPN, Bill Rasmussen. At the time when ESPN launched, Bill's original idea was to take University of Connecticut sports and show them to the state of Connecticut. It was the idea that morphed itself into a 24-hour-a-day national, now global service. But originally he had a lot of intention of doing quite a bit with UConn, and he did. And so he would go up to stores quite a bit. And I had a chance meeting with him in the old field house at stores in the parking lot back there. And I needed an internship at the time, and sold him that I'd like to do it. He suggested and arranged for me to talk with Rosa Gaddy, who still is at ESPN today, and Rosa hired me as an intern, and then a year later hired me as a full-time employee, and I haven't left.
Okay, now when you got started off as an intern, what was it like at that particular time at ESPN?
It totally different than it is today, considerably smaller. We had one building. When I was working as an intern, we worked in a trailer that was behind the main Sports Center studio. Most of the people that were working there were in their 20s, all believing that a 24-hour sports network would work, and now it seems kind of funny to think back that lots of people did not think it would work at the time, but we all did believe that it would, but it was a very small group of people. Many of them are still at ESPN today. there's more than 30 people that are still there that were there in the first year.
Okay. Now, when you got started off at ESPN pretty much in the early 80s, did you have a desire or love for sports in general?
Yes, I was a huge sports fan, and it just seemed like the perfect place to work. Dedicated to sports around the clock, and keep in mind 30 years ago, almost all sports that you saw on television, with the exception of Monday Night Football, were on weekend afternoons. The idea of being able to see sports at 9 o'clock in the morning on a weekday, or to watch a game when you come home from work, it just didn't happen. So it was an exciting opportunity that we were providing sports 24 hours a day, and for me to also have the job right here in Connecticut was a nice plus as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you were starting off at ESPN, did you vision yourself of one day becoming a vice president?
No, no, really, and often get asked, could you envision what ESPN would become, which certainly couldn't. There were lots of reports in the early days that ESPN wouldn't survive, and our hope was that we would survive and that it would keep growing, but certainly couldn't envision everything that it's become today.
Mm-hmm. Now, as a vice president, what is your day-to-day operational functions?
I work in the public relations side of things. Our primary responsibility is to work with media that are reporting on us, facilitate that, provide them information. From a strategic end for the company, deciding the right approach to issues that come up, the right approach to publicizing new programs, new services that we're offering, and really helping manage a group of people that go out and do that and get the information out to our viewing public, that you as a consumer, as a viewer or reader or watcher of ESPN would have the ability to know what's going on and what programs are coming up and what ESPN's position is on certain things that pop up from time to time.
Is most of your work or all of your work behind closed scenes? Because many times when people watch ESPN, they don't really see the people in the corporate side.
Right.
They mostly see the broadcasters,
Right.
the announcers, the analysts. Is that how pretty much your role is, that you are always working behind closed
Yes.
doors?
Yeah, well, my door's open, but yes, behind the scenes for sure. There are 7,000 employees of ESPN around the world. 4,000 of them are here in Connecticut, and very few of those people you ever see on air. You become very familiar if you're a regular watcher of ESPN or a listener to ESPN of our announcers, but they're supported by a group of literally thousands of people that help them get the product on the air and help sell it and help produce it and distribute it, etc.
Mm-hmm. Do you work as a team, the corporate side and the broadcasters, or you work kind of separate?
Both. We have our responsibilities from a public relations end, but it certainly intersects with what they're doing on air, because the public is seeing and knowing ESPN through what the on-air product is, and their perceptions of ESPN and things are established by what they're seeing and reading. So quite a bit we're dependent on everybody throughout the company that's producing the content to know what we want to publicize and what we want to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Now, is your role as a vice president, is that pretty much your life? Are you driven by that particular job, or you have other activities that you have that same drive for?
Oh, I have plenty of drive outside of work. ESPN can take a lot of your time, not just in the workday, but in the nature of what I do, quite a bit on nights and weekends. But I have a family, 4 children that have raised here in Connecticut. I'm very involved in our community. Currently on the board of Bread for Life, which is the food pantry and soup kitchen based in Southington. Have been involved for many years with the Imagination Children's Museum. Being a UConn graduate, I've been involved in mentorship programs and speaking and things at UConn and stores, and get my hand involved with lots of other things as they come up, but those would be I'm also at my church in Southington, St. Dominic, a mentor in the confirmation program and a lector, so I certainly have my hands full outside of a job that keeps my hands full.
Okay. Now, does you find yourself at times as a vice president having the job so overwhelming? Because people get the impression that a vice president is constantly busy. You're traveling, you got meetings. Do you have enough time to actually do other things outside of your work?
Well, time management skills become very important in a position like I have, particularly when you do want to do some things outside of work. It can be challenging. ESPN literally gets bigger every year. The amount of things that we're involved in continues to expand. There's a real challenge staying on top of that, but it's important, and I know it's very important to myself personally to do many of these other things, and so you just have to make the time and do your best to juggle all the demands.
Mm-hmm. Now, most people who look at ESPN has never really been inside the building. What is the whole structure and development side of ESPN beyond what people just see when they turn on to a sports center?
Right. The primary studios and what people are familiar with are in Bristol. We do our late night sports center in Los Angeles, and there are some other programs. And of course, when we do games, that we're not doing things in Bristol. But when you're watching most episodes of Sports Center, you're watching Bristol. When you're watching NFL Countdown or Baseball Tonight, the studios are there in Bristol. Our radio studios are in Bristol. ESPN the magazine and ESPN.com do most of their work out of Bristol. But that's the centerpiece of a campus that that's on over 100 acres and has more than 1 million square feet. And the production space is a part of that, but it takes quite a lot to support that. And we've got close to 20 buildings in Bristol that we have people working on to help keep all aspects of ESPN going 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The operation never stops. And there are people there all night, all weekend, holidays, all dedicated to keeping the sports news and sports information flowing and keeping sports fans informed and on a very high quality basis. And so, but primarily it's all done from Bristol, Connecticut.
Okay. Now, recently, over the past 6 years, Connecticut has tried to move into the direction of getting into television and film.
Right.
Has ESPN really dipped into that? I at times seen ESPN do certain movies and documentaries. Is that something that ESPN is going to be pursuing to get into television and film?
We, for a few years, did produce some scripted dramas. One that we did in Connecticut, The Bronx is Burning, which was about the mid-'70s New York Yankees and what was going on in New York City at that time. In recent years, we've moved more away from the scripted movies into documentaries. Our 30 for 30 documentary series has been very successful for us. We do fairly regular new documentaries. We've just this year added shorts that are on ESPN.com, where you'll get a film. There was one that we debuted just a couple of weeks ago on the Arnold Palmer drink, which is the iced tea lemonade combination, a fun, whimsical look at that. And so all sorts of topics that we can do, but the approach now has been with, there's so many good stories in sports that we don't really feel that that we need to make them up. The things that have happened are worth a closer look, and we've put together really high quality documentaries the last few years.
Okay. Now, recently, the involvement that ESPN is mostly owned by Disney. When did that actually get started, and what type of impact having Disney as the majority stock ownership for ESPN has been able to do for ESPN? Right.
In the mid-'90s, Disney purchased Cap Cities, which was ESPN's parent company and ABC's parent company at the time, and we've been owned by Disney since that time. Disney is very much encourages ESPN's growth and the growth since the mid-'90s to today into all sorts of digital areas and the growth of ESPN.com and the expansion of networks and high-definition networks and now 3D networks. Global expansion has all been very much supported by the Walt Disney Company, and they, being a content company, being a creative company, understanding how to serve consumers and what consumers are looking for, has been a big advantage for ESPN. And now it's really the Disney approach. It's been so long that they have owned us that it's second nature.
Now, when you hear other networks like NBC Sports moving into Connecticut,
Right.
and does ESPN look at that as competition?
Well, NBC Sports, of course, is a competitor for us on a national level. You know, we've worked with the state of Connecticut, and the state of Connecticut's worked with us with tax legislation to encourage a film and television industry to grow here in Connecticut. ESPN has been the leading example of that. We've really been a growth engine for the economy in central Connecticut. But through this legislation, they've been able to attract NBC Sportsnet, the new Back 9 network that's based here in Hartford, Blue Sky Animation down in Fairfield County. There's been a number of shows that they've been able to attract in Fairfield County. So there is an industry growing. ESPN looks at that as a strength, but there's certainly, to your point, there is now a growing competition with the workforce, that if someone wants to work in Connecticut and they want to work in television, ESPN was by far their leading option. Now, you know, there are more opportunities for workers that are working in the television industry in Connecticut, and that's going to continue to grow because NBC's our growth will continue to happen, but NBC's just beginning to expand their operation in Stamford.
Now, as a vice president, when you see these new networks that you just mentioned, NBC Sports Network, Back 9 Network, come into Connecticut, what kind of, I guess, promotions that you would tell people who tune in to cable television that separates ESPN better than those networks? What would you kind of tell people the reason that you should still look at ESPN instead of watching those other networks?
Well, it really begins with what programming that we're able to acquire. When you look at ESPN's program lineup, from Monday Night Football to the BCS to the NBA to our depth in college basketball with all the major conferences, and NASCAR and golf and tennis, we just have such an advantage in terms of the programming lineup over 30 years to build that lineup and build the relationships with the leagues. Second, the commitment that we've made to the sports news side of things. SportsCenter is the flagship brand, but we do sports news around the clock and have hundreds of people dedicated to it in Bristol, so that when a story breaks, we have the resources that we're able to cover the story thoroughly, and are doing it often on a live basis 24 hours a day. So we have a big advantage. We have an advantage that we have gone into the ESPN the magazine and on the digital front, and if you use your iPad or iPhone now to watch television, ESPN is there. If you listen to podcasts that you can download off the internet, ESPN is there. So we have so many different ways to serve sports fans wherever they are, whenever they want sports. That's the challenge for NBC or any other competitor that is coming towards us. But you know, we certainly look at them as serious competitors. The more there is in the marketplace that's sports, the more options there are for people to watch.
Okay. Now, where you're at right now, what would be the next goals that you would like to pursue beyond just vice president of communication, or are you pretty much satisfied with your current position?
Well, the exciting thing with being at ESPN for 30 years is I can say that every single year, 2012, my job was different than it was in 2011, and I could backtrack over 30 years and say that with the growth of the company and with the growth of the products and the new things that we're in, there's always something new. I don't know what I'll work on 2013. You can't imagine. I think back when we opened our first ESPN Zone in Baltimore 15 or so years ago, which was really a restaurant. And I was there, when did my job description become restaurant openings? But when you're working at ESPN, really anything can happen. For the company now, a lot of the focus is on the digital side. We're able to distribute our networks to you as you're watching your kids' Little League game, or as you're hanging out in a park or what have you, because of the growth in wireless and new applications, new ways to stream the video. Even this program that we're on, it's not the type of thing that would have existed, several years back, and now there's that ability to really transform how people stay informed.
Okay. Now, you said you've been at ESPN for 30 years. Do most employees who get hired at ESPN stay at ESPN, or do they kind of move back and forth, or is it kind of a stability that exists there?
Yeah, there's a great stability. There are tens of thousands of people around the country that apply to us every year that want to work at ESPN, and a lot of people, when they get hired, it's a great place to work. They enjoy their coworkers, they enjoy what they're working on, and there's a very little turnover. There are a lot of people like myself that have been there for 30 years, but there's lots of people that are more experienced than I have even. And we're joking with somebody recently that had been there 10 years that they're still considered a rookie because they've only been there 10 years. So it's a nice situation. ESPN's able to attract such a high quality workforce that people not only are working on a product in sports television that they love, but their co-workers are usually people that that they're very happy to be working with on that high level.
Now, where will ESPN be going at over the next 5 to 10 years with the recent expansion that has started taking place over the past 2 years?
We've been growing our Bristol campus. Right now, our second digital center is under construction. That will get the outside of the shell of it is now complete. We broke ground on it just a year ago. By about 18 months from now, we'll be broadcasting SportsCenter and a lot of other programs from there. It'll give us flexibility to do more studio shows. It will give us the flexibility to give people bigger operating spaces to work in than what they currently have. It's difficult to really say what's next. You don't know as the technology emerges what the opportunities will be, but we have the ability to, when we see things like streaming video coming about or wireless distribution, to be an early adapter to it and to be there and to learn and grow from it, and then ultimately provide a really solid product. If you have experience watching television on an iPad or on a phone, the experience that you have watching ESPN is probably better than you have watching a lot of other things. People have had very frustrating times downloading and being able to be approved to see it and things. And because we got there early and put the resources into it, the Watch ESPN product now is a leader. And we're doing similar things with with all sorts of applications and things that you can put on your phone. So that type of thing will grow. We're also the Spanish language market for us is very big. The census data all shows the amount of Spanish-speaking population growing. ESPN Deportes is well positioned for that. We have ESPN Deportes on the radio. We do quite a bit online, and that's a big growth opportunity for us as well.
Now, you said you weren't really sure what would be the next venture for you, but if the opportunity came that you would be president of communication, would you look at that as a next challenge?
Well, the next one would be senior vice president. I'm going to have you go in, Jonathan, and do a sales pitch for me. And yes, would be happy to, but very happy with what I'm doing right now.
And that's very important that you always are happy with what you're doing, because sometimes you might see you can get a higher position, but you might not actually be as happy as you are doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, I'm very happy doing what I'm doing currently, and work with a lot of great people, and have bosses that are wonderful as well, and so a very good circumstance.
Now, I really didn't want to get into this, but it might be kind of relevant towards your position. Recently, we had a tremendous tragedy that has taken place in our state with the school killings. And so much, I think, security-wise, ESPN changed a lot since 9/11.
Right.
I would like for you to address that part, but also address the part as a vice president. Do you feel you need security at the position that you have?
Well, the company and many companies after September 11 really evaluated security processes and looked to make the company safer. In Bristol, that certainly was the case. We have very stringent security procedures to get people onto our campus, and a tremendous amount of effort is put into keeping the campus safe. And then for ESPN, as we go out to events, we're producing Monday Night Football every week, but every single day we're producing events, and our security department wants to make sure that our employees are safe there in the event anything were to happen. And so security just has moved to the forefront in the last 10 years. and needs to stay that way. The safety of the employees is paramount to us. Certainly have not felt that our security division is not aware of all the things that are going on in the world and keep the campus and keep our employees secure.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a smart thing to do because ESPN is very visible, and there are tragedies that happen in the world. So it's important for not just the security department, but everyone to be keeping safety in front of mind. And the news of this past week certainly underscores that.
Mm-hmm. Now, overall, though, as a vice president, do you feel safe outside of ESPN, just in general, or do you have any cautious?
Yeah, no, I feel safe, and I'm very comfortable with what our security area is doing, and very comfortable living here in Connecticut.
Okay. Now, you say you have children. I don't know if you have boys or girls.
Both.
You have
two
both.
boys and 2 girls.
Okay. Do they would consider pursuing in the same footsteps that you have moved in, or you want something different?
They all 4 have different outlooks and different goals, and my oldest is already out of school and a school teacher in Connecticut, a 6th grade science teacher, and really had very little interest in the television field and had her own interests. My son just graduated from UConn, and he is working at ESPN, working on the mobile television network that we have, that if you were to take out a BlackBerry and watch ESPN Mobile is there, and he works overnight getting that programming to you. I have a daughter who's at UConn and a younger son who's in high school. Neither of them have expressed much interest in working at ESPN, and as I said, they're all they're their own people and their own interests, and have seen growing up a lot of excitement with ESPN and with the Disney ownership, and have enjoyed that, but certainly have their own interests.
Now, you mentioned your son has a position at ESPN. Do you take pride or feel good that your son is kind of working for the same company that you work for?
Oh, absolutely. He wanted at a very early age to work at ESPN. Didn't know if that would work out. He graduated, and it's a challenge to get in. And he was fortunate to have an opening in the mobile area come up. And I visited him a few weeks after he started late one night to see what he does and where he works, and certainly was a matter of pride.
Mm-hmm. Now, excuse me, obviously people realize through technology the occupations at ESPN has changed a lot since the beginning stages, with digital media, just equipment-wise, everything has changed dramatically. Has the change been also at the corporate side as a vice president? Would a vice president like yourself would have to be doing something a lot different today than it would have been when you first got started?
Well, on a couple fronts, the technology has meant that ESPN's business can be so much greater than a singular television network. Mm-hmm. Now with digital television, we've got 7 different services. We have 3D, we have HD. But now we get into so much into the digital world, and so many different services and things that you just could have never imagined back in time. From my end, on a public relations side, a lot of the tools of social media, things like Twitter and Facebook and things and YouTube that didn't exist and certainly weren't prominent until a few years ago. Twitter has really changed how all PR professionals do their job, because information is flowing in a real-time basis, and people want to know everything immediately. And that presents an opportunity that we can go directly to consumers and provide them information. But there's also the challenge side of it, that a story can become a big deal that needs to be addressed very rapidly, because consumers and media can find out instantaneously what's going on, and they select their own news service and whatever it is that they're interested in learning about. And fortunately for us, a lot of people want to know about ESPN, and so they follow us.
Okay. Well, the time has went by so fast. I really enjoyed doing this segment here of All About You. I think you really give a good definition of what your role and what ESPN has been able to do. And I think you've really put a good step on ESPN, and you've given a lot of people information about ESPN that they probably don't always get a chance to hear. So I really appreciate you giving up your morning to come down.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's been a pleasure and enjoyed talking with you.
Okay. Again, this is Jonathan Small, host and producer of All About You. I enjoyed my program today. And until the next time, I wish everybody the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.